Starting next year, we'll be living with my parents. Emma, you'll take care of them. My husband Ethan declared loudly in front of everyone at the housewarming party for my in-laws' new home. His words weren't taken as a joke. Everyone realized he was serious. The laughter died down, and cold stares were directed at Ethan. Yet, he alone looked satisfied and shifted his gaze to his brother, Lucas. So I'll be taking this house. Mom and Dad will be relieved. I'm more reliable than useless Lucas, he announced. He probably thought that taking on the responsibility of caregiving would raise his standing and that he was lucky to get the house. But it sounded like he was entirely leaving the caregiving to me. I couldn't help but laugh at Ethan's foolishness. What? I'm not taking care of them. Your wife quit a week ago, I said. What? Ethan responded, flustered. Relatives murmured in surprise at my shocking words, and Ethan started to panic. He tried to cover it up, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I spoke up in front of my in-laws. My name is Emma. I'm a 42-year-old housewife. The truth is, I grew up in a child welfare institution. My parents divorced when I was young, and I was taken in by my mom, who passed away from illness when I was 9. With no siblings or knowledge of my grandparents, I was left all alone, which made me yearn deeply for a family. When I was 23, I met Ethan, who was 3 years older than me. He worked at his father Jackson's company and already held a managerial position. Being surrounded by family in a family-run business made Ethan someone I admired, and for some reason, he took a liking to me. I'm not worthy to be Ethan's girlfriend, I thought, feeling too humbled to refuse, let alone become part of an executive family. But Ethan continued to pursue me persistently. In the end, I succumbed to his persistence, and we began dating and eventually married. I worried that my background would make my in-laws dislike me, but my mother-in-law Isabella and the rest of the family were wonderful people, making me feel blessed to have married Ethan. However, there was something about Ethan that concerned me. He harbored a strong inferiority complex toward his older brother Lucas. Lucas also worked at Jackson's company and was the next in line to be president. Being brothers in the same job should have made them strong partners, but with Lucas being the eldest and the designated successor, Ethan viewed him as a rival. I understood why he might feel this way, but Ethan's feelings towards Lucas went beyond mere rivalry. I first noticed it shortly after our marriage. After the wedding, Ethan moved out of his parents' house, and we started our newlywed life in an apartment near his workplace. Once our life settled down, Ethan opened up. I'm proud that I got married and became independent before Lucas. Lucas is a great person, and he's dating someone too, right? I'm sure they'll get married soon. Then Isabella and Jackson can relax, I replied, meaning that parents would feel at ease once their children were settled. However, Ethan frowned at my words. What do you mean by that? Are you saying they can't feel at ease just because I got married? That's not what I meant. Yeah, I'm just the second son. The eldest son gets all the privileges. Ethan's childish remark filled my young heart with guilt. He continued to harp on about being the second son for a while. Each time, I offered supportive words, but they never seemed to reach him. About 2 years later, Lucas's marriage was announced. His partner was Mia, a woman he had been dating since college, and I had met her several times. She was a perfect match for Lucas, a truly wonderful woman. Jackson, Isabella, and I were delighted about the marriage, but Ethan uttered something outrageous at the wedding. I thought they'd break up eventually, but it's Mia, huh? He's even got a better wife than me. I couldn't believe my ears. I didn't even want to ask what he meant. I certainly don't think I can compete with Mia, who is intelligent and beautiful as a woman. However, I thought it was wrong for Ethan to say that, and in the first place, it's not something that should be compared. With a small, bitter smile, I whispered, "I'm sorry." It was Isabella who stood up for me. "What are you saying? You're the one who lost by making such disgraceful remarks in the first place." Isabella, who stated this clearly, then turned to me and said quietly, "I'm sorry. Ethan just wants to complain about Lucas. Don't worry about it. No one thinks there's a winner here." Thanks to Isabella's comforting words, I managed not to cry. But Ethan's displeased expression remained, and he continued to sit sulking. After that, Ethan involved me in his attempts to outdo Lucas at every turn. Shortly after Lucas's wedding, he started saying, "We have to have a child before Lucas." But I didn't get pregnant easily. I felt sorry about it and made efforts to conceive, but in the end, Lucas and Mia were blessed with a child before us. When Ethan found out, "It's your fault we lost," he was furious. A year after Lucas and Mia had their child, we were blessed with a child too, but our baby was a girl. Lucas's child is a boy, and we have a girl. He even extended his rivalry to our children. Nevertheless, Jackson, Isabella, Lucas, and Mia all doted on our daughter, Sophia. "I want our next child to be a girl too," Mia said, also doting on Sophia. Ethan, the only one discontented with Sophia being a girl, watched as she grew up loved by everyone in the family. However, I never had another child. It had taken a long time to conceive Sophia, and it couldn't be helped. I considered it a miracle and a great blessing to have Sophia at all. During this time, Lucas and Mia were blessed with a much-awaited baby girl. I was happy for them, but I also found myself dreading Ethan's possible snide remarks. "We need to build a house before Lucas does, at least." Ethan's competitive spirit burned bright, and he announced plans to build a new house. Jackson and Isabella, oblivious to Ethan's motives, happily provided the funds. I wonder how long Lucas will keep renting. Despite receiving financial support from Jackson and Isabella, Ethan still made snide comments about Lucas. I felt uneasy whenever Ethan tried to compete with Lucas. Building a new house under these circumstances didn't bring me genuine joy. "You shouldn't say things like that. There's no need to compete. He's your only brother." I repeatedly admonished Ethan for his backbiting, but he never changed. Even after moving into our new house and watching Sophia grow up healthy and happy, Ethan never recognized our happiness. He constantly saw Lucas as an adversary. The more I tried to reprimand Ethan for his behavior, the colder he grew towards me, eventually voicing his dissatisfaction with me as well. "If I'd known you couldn't have a son, I wouldn't have married you." Those words made me cry in secret. When Sophia had just turned 12, an incident occurred. Ethan came home late every day because of work. However, when I asked Mia, she said Lucas was home. I suspected an affair, but as a housewife, I couldn't afford to hire a private investigator, so I could only confront Ethan directly. "Why are you coming home late every day?" "It's work. You know that. What's with the sudden questioning?" But Ethan coldly brushed off my question. "But Lucas isn't staying late at work, right? Is it only you working late?" Feeling uneasy, I asked this, and Ethan clicked his tongue. "What's with the insinuation, checking up on me like that? I wasn't trying to check up on you. But that's what it is, isn't it? You already knew it wasn't work." Ethan made exaggerated noises and tried to intimidate me with his loud voice. Though I wasn't scared, I fell silent. Caught between the fear of knowing the truth and the need to address the situation, Ethan finally said, "I'm popular with women. Unlike Lucas, I won't be tied down to an old woman. I was stunned and deeply shocked by his words. Ethan continued speaking, revealing more. His current girlfriend, a 22-year-old named Harper, was beautiful and never complained, unlike me. Harper is beautiful and doesn't nag like you. I should have married her from the start. Marrying you just because I was in a rush to wed before Lucas was a mistake. I had endured so much, but hearing this, I finally reached my limit. Fine then, why don't we just get divorced? Ethan laughed. Sure, I'm fine with that. But you'll be the one struggling, not me. No family, no job, I'm doing you a favor by staying. You should be more grateful. Angry, I stood up and thrust the divorce papers I had been holding out. I had kept these papers as a talisman, a reminder that I could always free myself. Presenting them now meant the end. I expected Ethan to be taken aback and apologize. However, my hope was quickly shattered. Even seeing the divorce papers, Ethan merely sneered. If you want me to sign, I'll sign. Not like you have the guts to go through with it. He signed the papers without hesitation. Mocked, I knew divorcing now would only put me at a disadvantage. Go ahead, file them if you dare. Ethan's taunting words echoed as he handed me the signed papers. Frustrated, I could only grip them tightly. A year passed. The in-laws decided to rebuild their house. The old house was inconvenient for Jackson and Isabella. They considered remodeling but decided to build a new one, as Jackson wanted a custom home for their final years. They consulted Mia and me, resulting in a beautiful new house. They planned a celebration party, inviting the family. Emma, could you help with the preparations? Isabella asked. Of course, I replied. Due to a request from Isabella, I ended up helping with the party preparations. The large new house seemed too big for just Jackson and Isabella, but I assumed they would eventually pass it on to Lucas. A few weeks later, the family gathered for the celebration. Mia and I were busy with the preparations. Sophia and Lucas's and Mia's children had lessons and would join later, allowing the adults to have some time together first. Everyone raised their glasses for a toast, and then Ethan spoke up. This is a great house, isn't it? We made sure to have plenty of room so you all can visit anytime. Jackson replied, clearly pleased. Isabella smiled warmly, also looking delighted. Then Ethan said something surprising. But isn't it too big for just the two of you? How about moving in with us? I was shocked. What was he thinking? Everyone else laughed, thinking it was a joke. Didn't you just build a house a few years ago? What are you talking about? Yeah, and what about Sophia's school? Someone added. But Ethan's expression remained serious. Sophia will start middle school next year, so it's perfect timing. Starting next year, we'll all live together. Emma can take care of Mom and Dad. It became clear to everyone that Ethan wasn't joking. The laughter died down, replaced by confused and cold stares. They all wondered what Ethan was thinking. Ethan, however, seemed pleased with himself and turned to Lucas. So, I'll take this house, he declared, looking at Jackson and Isabella. Don't worry, Dad and Mom. I'll take better care of you than useless Lucas. Everyone was visibly puzzled. Ethan seemed to think that taking on the caregiving responsibilities would raise his standing and allow him to claim the house. He also seemed to assume that I'd handle all the caregiving. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Everyone's eyes turned to me as I laughed. See, even Emma agrees. Don't worry, we've got this. Ethan misunderstood my laughter as agreement. I decided to set him straight. What? I won't be doing any caregiving. I quit being your wife quit a week ago.
What?
Stop joking. Aren't you marrying young and beautiful Harper? My words caused a stir among the in-laws, and Ethan started to panic. Harper? What's going on?
What do you mean?
Ethan, trying to cover up, forced a smile at me.
What are you talking about? I don't know anyone named Harper.
I wasn't going to let him off the hook. Don't play dumb. It hasn't even been a year since you told me about her. I continued with a smile. Harper, who works at the same company. You said she was 22 a year ago, so she's 23 now? You boasted about dating young and beautiful Harper. That's why I quit being your wife. As I exposed his affair, Ethan grew increasingly panicked. By the time I finished, he was pale, sweating profusely, and looking down in desperation. In contrast, Lucas turned bright red with anger. What's going on? You're having an affair with a coworker?
Isabella, contact HR right away and ask about an employee named Harper, around 23 years old. Understood.
Isabella replied, her face also pale, as she stood up with her mobile phone.
Wait, no, please wait.
Ethan yelled, trying to follow Isabella, but Jackson and Lucas wouldn't let him. Lucas and Jackson's fury didn't subside as they continued to shout at Ethan. The rest of the family looked at him with disdain, making him feel even smaller.
Ethan, explain yourself properly,
Jackson demanded.
But,
Ethan stammered, unable to form coherent sentences under Lucas and Jackson's grilling. I watched it all with a smile. No matter how many questions Lucas and Jackson threw at him, Ethan kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding. Fed up with his evasions, Jackson slammed his fist on the table, making a loud noise as he stood up.
Dad, not a cent will go to you. All will be given to Lucas and Sophia as a living inheritance. Leave the company. From today onwards, you are not allowed in this house.
Ethan panicked. Jackson, who had been deceived by Ethan's lies and self-preservation, finally got really angry. Realizing at last that things had gone beyond repair, Ethan hastily began explaining.
Please, Dad, listen. It's not like that. I don't want to hear it. I'll get the details from Emma later. Now, get out.
Ethan looked at me, pleading for help with his eyes. But I had no intention of helping. I would just tell the truth.
Of course, I'll explain everything later. But for now, the food is getting cold.
Yes, let's eat, Mia added, helping me redirect everyone's attention. Finally, people began to eat. Relieved, Ethan tried to start eating with everyone else, but at that moment, everyone glared at him.
You get out. But, no, No excuses. Just leave.
Unable to withstand Jackson's shouting and everyone's cold stares, Ethan stood up. His pathetic figure was almost comical. Emma, let's go, he said to me, trying to maintain some dignity.
What?
For a moment, I wondered if he expected me to leave too. But Jackson quickly intervened.
Why should Emma leave? You're the only one leaving. Right, goodbye.
Ethan left the in-laws' house, visibly upset. Seeing him driven out was a satisfying sight. A few minutes later, Sophia and the other kids arrived from their extracurricular activities, oblivious to Ethan's absence.
It's been a while since we've all gathered like this. It's fun,
Sophia said, making me laugh. She seemed to understand who truly cared about her. After a delightful time, Sophia and I returned home. Once the relatives left and only family remained, I explained Ethan's actions in detail to Jackson and Isabella, who apologized and expressed concern for me. Despite feeling sorry for causing a scene at the celebration, I reassured them and headed home.
Welcome back. What the hell was that?
Ethan yelled at me the moment we stepped inside. Not wanting Sophia to witness our argument, I sent her to her room and prepared to confront Ethan.
I only told the truth because you made such reckless claims. But saying you quit being my wife. Don't you feel any shame in front of Dad and Mom? I really have quit being your wife. The divorce papers have already been filed.
Ethan, shocked, stared at me with his mouth open, anger momentarily forgotten.
Don't you remember? Just a week ago.
I began recounting the events to Ethan. A week ago, he had come home past 1 a.m., drunk after being with Harper.
I come home to relax, but seeing you here just makes me more tired,
he had said, waking me up just to insult me. I was not a saint who could forgive infidelity indefinitely. Although I had endured for the sake of staying together, that remark pushed me to my limit.
Fine. Then, we'll get a divorce. You always say that, but you never follow through. I'm the one who wants a divorce.
Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, I submitted the divorce papers the next day. Ethan behaved normally the following day, either forgetting due to his drunkenness or pretending to. Regardless, I took advantage of his ignorance and quietly prepared to move out. Ethan turned pale at my words.
I said that. It was just a joke. I didn't mean for us to divorce.
What do you mean, didn't mean?
We're already divorced. Even if we're getting a divorce, we need to discuss it more. This makes me look like the bad guy.
Suddenly, Ethan flew into a rage, yelling at me.
It's not just making you look bad, you are the bad guy.
I confronted him with the reality, but he refused to acknowledge it, getting angrier instead.
You have your faults too. What will Dad think after what happened today?
Ethan mumbled, clearly more concerned about his image than our relationship. I was increasingly disillusioned with him.
Anyway, I'll move out as soon as the new place is ready. What? You think I'll let you off that easy after what you pulled? If you want to leave so badly, get out now.
How could he say such things to a wife he had been with for over 15 years? Knowing I had no place to go and still saying such things is just too cruel. What's wrong?
If you apologize to me properly and tell Dad and Mom that you were lying, I might forgive you.
Ethan sneered. I could manage alone, but with Sophia, I couldn't afford to lose our home. Just as I was feeling cornered, a savior appeared.
I recorded your argument. I've already sent it to Grandpa and Grandma.
It was Sophia. When Ethan's loud voice started to be heard, Sophia, who had been worried about me and hiding outside the living room, came out of the bedroom. It seems she recorded the scene of Ethan yelling at me and sent it to Jackson. Ethan turned pale again at Sophia's words. The last thing he wanted was for Jackson and Isabella to hear what he had said. As my lips curled into a smile, Ethan's phone rang. It was Jackson. Ethan reacted to the ringing phone but hesitated to answer.
Should I tell them it was all my lies?
Ethan glared at me as the phone continued to ring.
Or will you explain yourself?
Ethan clicked his tongue, grabbed his phone, and walked out to take the call. Whatever he said, he was going to get an earful from Jackson. Later, Isabella called me. She told me Jackson wanted to talk to Ethan again. And Ethan was heading to the in-laws' house the next day. The next morning, while Sophia was at school and I was preparing to move, the doorbell rang. It was Lucas.
Lucas, what brings you here?
Emma, I'm really sorry for Ethan's behavior. Dad sent me.
Jackson did?
Lucas nodded and immediately called a locksmith to change the locks. Once the new locks were installed, the company's legal counsel arrived next. They were there to arrange compensation claims against Harper and Ethan. It happened in an instant, but with Lucas's support, I quickly took care of the procedures.
We can arrange for Emma to get the house in the division of property. Considering Ethan's infidelity and the money he spent, he probably doesn't have much besides the house. At the very least, I want Emma to have it.
Of course. I was surprised by this conversation, but soon tears started to fall. These were tears of relief, knowing that I could continue to raise Sophia as before.
Emma, I know you've always taken good care of Ethan, Dad, and Mom. Ethan may be a hopeless brother, but I consider you my sister. And Dad and Mom wanted it this way too.
Lucas said this to me. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I struggled to find the right words to thank him. At that moment, I realized that Ethan would never be able to surpass Lucas. After being severely scolded by his parents, Ethan came back home. But the house was already locked. Of course, he couldn't enter with the key he had.
Emma, what do you think you're doing?
Hearing Ethan's voice, Lucas stood up and went to the door.
Admit your fault and apologize. Lucas? This house belongs to Emma. If you want to come in, you must apologize first.
Ethan was silent for a while, but Lucas explained to him that the house was awarded to me in the property division. After some time, Ethan finally spoke words of apology.
It was all my fault.
I peeked from the living room to see his expression and noticed neighbors laughing at him as students were coming home from school.
Emma, I'm really sorry. I was wrong. Please let me in so I can apologize properly.
Ethan kept repeating the same words. Seeing his pathetic state, I couldn't help but laugh. He said he would go to a motel for the time being. Under Lucas's supervision, he came into the house to get his things and then left. Perhaps it was because Lucas was there, or because of the scolding he received from Jackson and Isabella, but Ethan didn't complain to me as usual. I watched him leave the house quietly, feeling both relief and a sense of poetic justice. The next day, Lucas arranged a meeting with Ethan and Harper. He asked if I wanted to join, but I declined, knowing that seeing Harper would make me feel ill. Instead, I asked to be connected by phone so I could hear the conversation. I needed to hear what excuses Ethan would make.
Was what Emma said true?
I heard Lucas's voice, followed by Ethan's.
I'm really sorry to Emma, but it was true love. I've already broken up with Emma, and I plan to marry Harper.
I felt irritated by his words, but if that was the case, so be it. As I was listening to the voices coming through the phone and thinking about this, a voice interrupted.
Wait.
Was it Harper? I heard a young woman's voice.
Are you kidding me? You call our relationship true love? Disgusting. What? That's impossible. To be honest, I can't accept any settlement money for this.
I was shocked by her words. Lucas and Ethan, who were on the other end of the call, were likely just as surprised.
But ultimately, you did hurt Ethan's wife. You understand that, right?
Lucas said.
Even if you say that, it's not my fault. Ethan is certainly at fault. But you are also an accomplice. You have an obligation to pay.
I felt reassured by Lucas standing up for me. Harper, realizing she couldn't escape, responded irritably.
Fine, fine. I got a lot of things from him, so it's not a total loss. A loss? Harper, didn't you say you wanted to marry me? This is a burden for you, but we can finally.
I heard Ethan's voice. But Harper burst into laughter.
What are you talking about?
Did you seriously believe that? No way.
You were just a source of money for me.
I struggled to suppress my laughter. It seemed that Ethan was the only one who thought it was true love, while Harper saw him merely as a financial provider.
Besides, you've been hitting on other women too, right? Why am I the only one at fault? What?
Were the other women not interested? Oh, I've really met a weirdo. Ethan must have been deeply shocked. Although I was angry with Harper for her affair, I felt a little satisfied that she had given Ethan a severe blow. Harper was at fault too, but there was no doubt that Ethan, who flirted with young women at work despite being married, was a despicable person.
Harper, you must be joking.
Ethan's tearful, pained voice was followed by Lucas's deep, exasperated sigh. No, no. Saying it was true love is a real joke. What part of middle-aged Ethan did you think I'd fall for? You need to face reality. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ethan, who must have heard my laughter on the other end of the phone, called out my name in realization.
Emma!
Realizing I was listening, he called out my name, but I only muttered,
My condolences,
and hung up the phone. Sure, Ethan had some money, but that was his only charm. He wasn't good-looking, didn't value his family, and such a man fantasizing about being loved by a young, beautiful woman was just a fantasy. After the meeting, Ethan came back to the house in less than an hour. He started shouting in front of the locked door again.
Emma, what happened earlier was different.
Different? There's no need to explain to me. We're strangers now. I spoke to Ethan through the front door.
Don't say that. If you just forgive me, we can go back to our old life, right? That would be best for you and Sophia too.
Oh? How convenient for you now that Harper dumped you. Unfortunately, I don't have a hobby of picking up trash that others have thrown away. I said with a laugh, and Ethan fell silent. Reflect on your actions and live honestly from now on. You'll soon get official notice about the settlement and child support. After a while, I could hear Ethan crying. He finally realized his foolishness. I knew I would never forgive Ethan. Still, I hoped he would fulfill his minimum duties as Sophia's dad. In the end, Ethan lost his family, job, and Harper through all of this. He was still not allowed into the in-laws' house and was disowned by both his relatives and Jackson and Isabella. He currently lives in a dormitory of a company known to Lucas, working under a hidden identity. Jackson insisted he work in a supervised environment to ensure he pays the settlement and child support. His new workplace is full of older colleagues. For the first time in his life, Ethan, who had never been in a position to be reprimanded, was now learning the true harshness of the world while being scolded by others. Harper was fired from her job. She couldn't pay the settlement in one lump sum, so she proposed installments, which I agreed to. I don't know what she's doing now, but so far, she has been making the monthly payments. She won't finish paying off the settlement until she turns 33. By then, she might be married or have children. The fact that she continues paying the settlement is a bigger blow than the amount itself. I hope this experience has taught her to live more wisely and avoid foolish mistakes in the future. As for me, I've returned to work at Jackson's company on Lucas's recommendation. Sophia is now in middle school, and we live together in the house I received from the property settlement. Mia and Isabella help out when needed, especially when I work late, by taking care of Sophia and feeding her. I am truly grateful to everyone for supporting Sophia and me in our daily lives. As Jackson said, most of the property had already been gifted to Sophia and Lucas while Jackson was alive.
Even if there's a tax, it's much better than letting Ethan get his hands on it,
he said. I plan to use it wisely for Sophia's future. Although Ethan is no longer part of our lives, I still consider Jackson, Isabella, Lucas, and Mia as my true family.
Back then, I said I wouldn't take care of the family, but I now think of you two, Jackson and Isabella, as my real parents. I intend to take care of you too, so please don't worry. I'm sure Mia feels the same way.
One day, I conveyed this to Jackson and Isabella, and they cried tears of joy. Now, I believe that marrying Ethan wasn't entirely bad. Pretend you need to use the restroom and escape. Under the table, my brother, Patrick, nudged my foot with his smartphone, secretly showing me the screen. It seemed he wanted to get me out of this situation. 3 years into our marriage, I finally got to introduce my brother Patrick to my husband Randolph. However, Patrick's face clouded within seconds of meeting Randolph, and he rudely ignored the conversation to stuff his face with the snacks in front of him.
That cake looks delicious. Riley, why don't you go to the restroom for a bit? Wait, what are you planning to do with my cake?
One piece didn't seem enough.
I'm a bit hungry. Can we talk after I eat this?
Patrick, being a detective, wasn't one to do things without reason. There must be a purpose behind Patrick's actions, but I couldn't grasp it. I headed to the restroom to gather my thoughts. After considering, I decided not to run away and returned to the living room. When I sat next to Patrick, he gave me a furious look as if to say, "Why did you come back?" I had taken some precautions, so I hoped he wouldn't be too angry. It seemed those precautions worked, as the doorbell rang after a while. When I checked the monitor, I finally understood his intentions. Randolph was apparently a terrible person. In that case, in this situation, Randolph would be facing severe consequences. I am Riley. I'm 35 years old and work in sales. I married my husband Randolph 3 years ago, and we don't have children yet. I also have a younger brother named Patrick, whom I haven't seen in a while. He didn't run away from home or have any complicated family issues, it was because of work. Patrick works as a cop on a small, sparsely populated island. Normally, cops on the island work in shifts of 2 or 3 to cover 24 hours, but he is the only cop there. That's why he can't come home often. Patrick became a cop partly because our dad was one, but also because he always had a strong sense of justice. When I was in 8th grade and Patrick was in 6th grade, we once witnessed a man shoplifting bread and drinks at a grocery store.
Hey, he's putting it inside his clothes. I'm going to warn him.
Wait. Didn't Dad say you should catch shoplifters only after they've left the store without paying? Otherwise, they might say they were going to pay at the register. Patrick was about to confront the shoplifter, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. I felt like a police officer ready to catch the shoplifter, fully immersed in the role. He seemed to feel the same, breathing excitedly. While we watched, trying not to be noticed, the man walked past the register and out of the store. Patrick and I ran after him.
Excuse me. What?
We caught up to him a little distance from the store, and Patrick called out to him. The man stopped and turned to look at us. It was then I realized how dangerous what we were doing could be. As we got closer, the man looked bigger than I had thought, and I began to worry. Is it safe for us middle schoolers to confront a shoplifter? I felt the sense of being a police officer fall away, leaving me just a trembling middle schooler.
Can you tell me the way to the nearest bus stop? Oh, I'll talk to him. Riley, you go to the restroom. Don't embarrass me in front of people. Fine, I'll go.
Patrick, quick thinking as always, saved me from my trembling fear. I fought the urge to run and instead slowly made my way to the grocery store restroom, pretending that was my destination. Once inside the grocery store, I reported the situation to an employee. One male staff member went to Patrick and the others, while another listened to my story and quickly checked the surveillance camera recordings. Just as I described, the camera clearly showed the theft, with the shoplifter failing to pass items through the register. Once confirmed, I went back to Patrick with the male employee. When we arrived, the shoplifter was shouting loudly. It seemed he realized he was caught when the employee arrived, and he was making a last-ditch effort.
The camera caught the moment of the theft. Could you come to the office and discuss it with us?
Upon hearing about the evidence, the shoplifter, realizing he was caught, obediently followed the male employee back into the store. Afterward, the staff thanked me, but I never found out what happened to the shoplifter. On the way home, Patrick apologized to me. "I'm sorry. That was dangerous. If the employee hadn't come, we might have been attacked by the shoplifter and he could have gotten away. It was my fault. Acting like a cop. It was thoughtless of me. I'm sorry." Until we got home, Patrick and I didn't speak at all. That night, our dad scolded us severely after hearing the story.
In situations like that, get an adult to call the police. You never know what a criminal might do. Never do something so dangerous again.
Patrick and I shrank as we listened to Dad's very reasonable lecture. I secretly think this was the event that inspired Patrick to pursue a career in law enforcement. Patrick probably wanted to be able to catch bad people himself. He not only has a strong sense of justice, but also a personality that cannot leave people in trouble alone.
Wow, people live on such small islands too. If they're struggling without doctors, they might be struggling without police too.
One day, Patrick was watching a documentary about a doctor who moved to a remote island to help its residents. Inspired by this program, middle school he set a goal to become a police officer who would protect the peace of such islands. He did indeed become a cop and now works on a remote island. Achieving his goal, he takes great pride in his work. However, he prioritizes his job too much, often neglecting his family, which is a small flaw of his. He says, "If I leave the island, I won't be able to respond if something happens," and he has stopped coming home, only contacting us occasionally. I think it's been 5 or 6 years since I last saw him. Nonetheless, my parents and I are proud of Patrick for working for the people, so we accept it. However, I really wanted him to be there for my wedding. I got married 3 years ago. We met in the most ordinary way, through a mutual acquaintance. Randolph is serious, works in sales, and is highly successful. He's already being given significant responsibilities with great expectations for his future. I also work in sales, but his achievements are far beyond mine. I wanted to boast about my wonderful husband Randolph to Patrick, but since he couldn't attend the wedding, I ended up just sending a photo. Normally, I'd be furious at him for not attending his sister's wedding, but Patrick had unavoidable circumstances at that time. Apparently, the day before the wedding, there was a report that a drunken assault suspect had fled to the island where he was stationed. Under such circumstances, he couldn't possibly leave the island. The suspect was later caught, and he called to apologize. "Riley, I'm sorry. I intended to come, but I just couldn't leave the island." "It's okay. You never come back, but someday you will, right? I'll introduce you to Randolph then. Or maybe we should come to the island."
Oh, come on, don't do that. I don't want to disrupt your newlywed life, and if I bring Randolph to a place like this, Riley might get mad at me for taking him to such a remote place.
He's not that kind of person. In the end, the suggestion to visit was declined, and Patrick meeting Randolph was postponed to someday. I decided to enjoy my newlywed life, taking his words to heart. However, my married life gradually turned out to be different from what I had imagined. When I started living with Randolph after getting married, I expected a sweet newlywed life. But Randolph prioritized work, and our newlywed life turned out to be different from what I had envisioned.
So, I'm going to bed first. Okay, good night.
Leaving Randolph in the living room reading a book, I headed to the bedroom alone. Randolph would come home from work, have dinner, take a shower, and then work on his materials or read business books until late at night. At this time, there was an overwhelming aura of "don't talk to me." It was as if there was an invisible wall around Randolph. On weekends, he would go out for dinner with clients in the evening or play futsal or golf early in the morning. On days when he went fishing, he would leave early in the morning and come back late at night.
Meeting outside of work helps build trust quickly. As a salesperson, you should be aware of that.
The key, he said, was not to talk about work. I understood that his success at work was built on hard work. He would work or study tirelessly, even on weekends. During Thanksgiving or Christmas, he would be delighted to secure uninterrupted time to study. As a result, although I wanted to visit our families with Randolph occasionally, it never happened. It's good to work hard. I heard some wives complain about their husbands not working at all. Compared to their problems, my complaint about Randolph being too dedicated to his work might be a luxury. But since we were newlyweds, I wanted him to spend a little more time with me. Having gotten married, I wanted to have children, but Randolph said, if we have a child now, it will affect my work, and continued to avoid it. When I brought up the topic of children, it made me seem desperate, as if I was craving them. Moreover, Randolph, always tired from work, would handle things in a rather perfunctory manner. Are we really a married couple? I began to question while looking at the ring on my left hand. He seemed to be the type not to feed the fish he caught. Before marriage, I thought he was kind, but my impression of Randolph changed significantly after getting married. Since the newlywed period is unique to this time, my dissatisfaction with his gradually grew. However, since Randolph was just working hard, I didn't want to be that annoying woman who says, "What's more important, your work or me?" So, I tried subtly to see if Randolph truly cared about me.
There was a molestation incident around here. Should I be more careful when coming home?
You're over 30 now, so you don't need to worry. Randolph's words made me feel uneasy. I should probably be more worried than I thought. I decided to express my feelings a bit more clearly. You always seem to be working, even when you're at home. But isn't that taking a toll on your body? Maybe you should rest sometimes. I mean, we're newlyweds. Shouldn't we try to have more of a married life?
I'm in my mid-30s now, and I'll be in my 40s before I know it. Now is the time to push myself at work. I have to become the sales manager. I don't want to just be a cog in the sales department. I want to be the one running the whole show, making the entire team excel. It's frustrating when people think anyone can do sales. Sure, engineers, lawyers, doctors, they do jobs that not everyone can do, but that doesn't mean sales should be looked down upon.
Randolph, who usually stays quiet at home, absorbed in making reports or reading books, was unusually talkative. Our work challenges were on different levels. While I struggled with monthly sales targets, Randolph had grander ambitions. I found myself unable to say anything to him. I began to think, maybe supporting Randolph is the right thing to do. So, I started to make sure not to disturb him while he studied at home. I would wake up at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast and get Randolph ready when he had early morning fishing or golf outings. A year into our marriage, after dedicating myself to supporting Randolph's work.
Hey, isn't dinner ready yet? I expect it to be ready when I get home.
I'm sorry. I got home a little late because of work.
You don't have a demanding job. If you're late, it's because you're not competent enough. You need to work harder.
It's not that. It's just a busy season.
People who can't handle their job always blame others. If you can't do housework because of your job, then quit. We don't have kids yet, so we can live on my salary.
Randolph had turned into a domineering husband. He would get angry if dinner wasn't ready when he got home. He would get upset if I took a shower or went to bed before he got home late. No matter how early he needed to get up for fishing or golf, if I didn't wake up first and prepare breakfast, he would get mad. And he belittled me, saying I was bad at my job, despite never seeing my work directly or being my boss. Sure, compared to him, who was hardworking and talented, I might seem less competent. But I was doing my best and considered myself average.
If you want to talk back, prove yourself with results at work.
These words made me feel inferior to Randolph, and I couldn't respond. If people saw my pathetic state, they would say, "This is moral harassment. You should stand up for yourself, or I couldn't endure this." I'd get a divorce. But he wasn't always cruel. He could be kind at times.
Welcome home. You're back early today.
Yeah. Today's fishing trip wasn't too far. Look, I caught a bass. Dinner isn't ready yet, right? I'll handle it. You take a break for a change. Randolph opened the fridge to see what he could cook besides fish. Tonight, I could relax on the sofa and wait for dinner to be ready. Moments like these made it impossible for me to dislike Randolph. Watching kind Randolph from behind, I thought, Randolph is just tough on work. He's working hard, and it's wrong of me to complain. Another year passed just like that, and our second year of marriage came to an end. Our third year of married life began. One day, after Randolph left as usual and I was alone at home, I sat on the sofa and reflected on the past 2 years and a bit of our married life. It's strange. There are no memories. The only thing that comes to mind is me doing housework for Randolph while working. As for good memories, the only ones that barely come to mind are our wedding, honeymoon, and the excitement I felt when we moved into this house and started our newlywed life. I realized that while I had been accumulating dissatisfaction with Randolph, I had been deceiving myself by thinking, this is something that can't be helped, this is something I should endure. Realizing this made me disillusioned with Randolph. But since we're married, it's not something that can be simply resolved with a goodbye. I shouldn't rush to a conclusion, but rather start by facing Randolph and my own feelings. I began to seriously think about the future, and it felt as if the part of me that had drifted away was coming back. The next day, out of the blue, I got a call from Patrick after a long time.
Patrick, it's been a long time. Almost 100 years, right?
A bit over 2 years. Actually, I'm moving back there.
Moving back? You mean leaving the island?
Yes, a new officer is coming, so I have to move back, and I'll be transferring from the community section to the detective section.
Really? So you'll be a detective like Dad?
Well, at first it'll probably be all grunt work. And since I'm moving back, introduce me to Randolph. Randolph. Randolph, huh? Since I was thinking a lot about Randolph at that time, my subtle reaction must have been noticeable over the phone. It's not like right away. I'll be busy with work for a while after moving back, so it'll be a bit later. That's not the point. What's wrong? Did something happen? As if to confirm my current situation and feelings, I explained to Patrick about the past 2 years and a bit of my married life. Since I hadn't talked to anyone about my marital problems with Randolph, including feeling belittled at work and having a domineering husband, my dissatisfaction with Randolph flowed out surprisingly smoothly. After listening to my story, Patrick gave me some very police-like advice.
Isn't that moral harassment?
I thought you'd say that. But he's kind sometimes, too.
That's a typical case of a woman who can't leave a guy who does moral harassment or DV. It's like you're in a brainwashed state with a mix of rewards and punishments.
But every time Patrick gave me advice, I countered with but after but. At this point, I was likely already in the brainwashed state Patrick described. Even understanding that, my but didn't stop.
In the end, it's up to Riley to decide what to do. If you don't want to leave, that's your freedom too.
After talking a lot about Randolph with Patrick, he handed down an extreme conclusion. I regretted being so annoying with my but after but. But, if I think about it, I don't have to come to a conclusion right now. Meet him once. Then let me know what you think.
Got it.
Patrick replied, sounding a bit annoyed. Knowing I was being an annoying sister, I felt sorry. That night, I told Randolph that Patrick was coming over.
My brother is coming to our house next time. We've been married for 3 years, but you've never met him, right? What? Isn't he a cop just like Scott? Yes, he is. And he's about to become a detective soon. Is home not okay? Would it be better outside?
No, home is fine. So, when is he coming?
He said that even when he gets back here, he'll be too busy with work to settle down for a while, so it'll probably be more than a month.
Randolph seemed nervous about meeting Patrick for the first time. I was also feeling a bit anxious, remembering the time I introduced Randolph to my family when we got married. A month later, Patrick came to our house.
This is Randolph. Nice to meet you.
Likewise, nice to meet you. I apologize for the delay in introducing myself. When I led Patrick into the living room, Randolph stood up from the sofa to greet him. Patrick returned Randolph's greeting, but his expression darkened when I introduced them, and he froze for a moment at the living room entrance. I panicked, wondering if Patrick had judged Randolph to be a useless man within 2 seconds of meeting him. However, after another 2 seconds, Patrick's expression was filled with the same sense of justice he had when he confronted a shoplifter back in middle school. Patrick's expression concerned me, but after confirming that they had finished their brief greetings, I guided Patrick to the living room table. Patrick sat next to me, with Randolph sitting across from him. I had already prepared tea and snacks for everyone at the table.
That cherry pie looks delicious. Riley, why don't you go to the restroom for a bit? Hey, what are you planning to do with my cherry pie?
One piece doesn't seem enough. I'm a bit hungry. Can we talk after I eat this? Sorry about that.
He likes cherry pie, so I prepared it, but that might have been a mistake. It's good he's not a difficult person.
Patrick smiled innocently like a child, prioritizing the cherry pie over his conversation with Randolph. I thought to myself, even if he's family, isn't this behavior rude for a first meeting, while showing a slightly displeased expression? At the same time, I wondered, Patrick wasn't such an ill-mannered person before, and tilted my head in confusion. There must have been some reason behind Patrick's words. However, not understanding it, I tilted my head even more. Patrick glanced at me as my head tilted more, then under the table, he opened a messaging app on his smartphone and started typing at an incredible speed. When the text was ready, he nudged my leg with his smartphone under the table and secretly showed it to me.
Pretend to go to the restroom and leave.
Patrick seemed to want to get me out of there. I understood his intent, but not the reason. However, I knew that Patrick, being a detective, wouldn't do something meaningless in such a situation.
You know, when you said earlier, go to the restroom, you really made me feel like I needed to go.
I left the living room and headed to the restroom, thinking about what Patrick was trying to do, whether I should leave the house instead of returning to the living room, and many other things. If Patrick told me to leave, does that mean there's a potential danger to me? But then, does that mean Randolph is dangerous? Could that be? If Randolph were dangerous, would it be okay to leave him alone with Patrick? If Patrick wanted to talk to Randolph, wouldn't it be better for me to be there since I know more about Randolph? Although Patrick told me to leave, I decided to return to the living room.
It took you long enough. It's rude to keep Patrick waiting, you know?
Isn't it ruder that Patrick suddenly started eating the cake?
And Randolph, it's not polite to say a woman takes too long in the restroom.
When I returned to the living room, Patrick looked at me with surprise in his eyes. As I sat down next to Patrick again, he gave me an angry look, asking with his eyes, "Why did you come back?" I hoped he wouldn't be too angry since I had taken some precautions. Besides, if he kept that expression, whatever Patrick was planning might be sensed by Randolph.
The phone's ringing. Huh? Oh. I'll take it outside.
His phone rang at the perfect timing, giving me an opportunity to get him out of the living room. Once he stepped out, he would be able to regain his composure.
I'm really sorry about my brother's manners.
I thought he'd be more serious since he's a cop.
Just because he's a cop doesn't mean he's always serious in his private life.
While I made some harmless small talk to fill the time, Patrick came back looking much calmer. He seemed to have regained his composure.
We once caught a shoplifter together, Riley and I. Handling that at such a young age.
Even after Patrick came back, the small talk continued. It was surprisingly normal and uneventful. Dad got really mad at us back then. Since Patrick kept the conversation going, I joined in. But I was worried, unsure if this was the right move since I didn't understand Patrick's intentions. Minutes passed with nothing happening. As my anxiety grew, the doorbell suddenly rang. When I checked the monitor to see who it was, I finally understood Patrick's plan. Patrick checked the monitor and then looked at me, signaling with his eyes.
It looks like they've arrived. Come with me.
What?
Just come on. There are things I need to confirm.
Randolph, looking puzzled, tilted his head as he followed us to the front door.
Who are you?
When Randolph opened the door, his confusion only deepened, and he tilted his head even more. Outside, there were two men and a car. I had a good idea of who these men were.
Aren't these guys detectives?
Detectives? But they're not in uniform.
Detectives aren't the same as police officers. They often wear plain clothes.
Oh, really? But why are detectives here? When I revealed that the men were detectives, Randolph's expression shifted from confusion to shock. I could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead. I still didn't know why the detectives were here, but I could explain why I had called them.
I called the police station. Patrick secretly told me to pretend to go to the restroom and escape. So, I thought it was an emergency. When you came back, I was surprised. I was planning to question Randolph after Riley left the house. There was a chance he might get violent. There's no way I could understand all that from pretend to go to the restroom and escape. That's why I called the police. When we caught that shoplifter in middle school, Dad told us to contact an adult or the police in an emergency. So, I told them my detective brother told me to escape. After that, I got a call from the police station to confirm. I asked them to send a few officers. Oh, so that call was from the police station.
Patrick and I solved one question after another. However, the most important question remained unanswered. Just as I was about to ask, Randolph, who had been ignored, interrupted.
Don't you dare make decisions behind my back. How did you figure out I was a criminal?
The moment the detectives showed up at our door, I had a hunch that Randolph had done something wrong. However, the real question was, what did he have done? I stayed silent, intently listening to the conversation between Patrick and Randolph to uncover the answer.
I just got back to this area recently and was getting updated on the local incidents. Among them, there was a series of sexual assaults believed to be committed by the same person. These incidents occurred in two places. One was a bit away from this house. The other was near the place where Randolph lived before he got married. I learned about Randolph's previous residence from a call with Riley. Strangely enough, the sexual assaults in the area where Randolph used to live suddenly stopped around the time he got married and moved. No way! Sexual assaults?
I felt the blood drain from my face at this shocking revelation.
That could just be a coincidence, right? The sketch made from the victims' descriptions looks exactly like Randolph. Not only that, but the physical characteristics also match perfectly. Riley sent me photos from their wedding, but it didn't click until I saw Randolph in person. It's one of those things where you need to see the actual face to realize it. I also sent those photos to my colleagues at the station. Because of those photos, we quickly decided that it was necessary to talk to Randolph, which is why the detectives are here now. Am I going to be arrested? It's hard to say right now. We need to take you to the station for questioning, and then we'll see where things stand.
With 3 detectives standing right there, Randolph must have realized that resisting was pointless. He quietly went with the officers to the police station. I'm sorry this happened so suddenly. As a detective, I couldn't overlook this.
I understand, Patrick. Both you and Dad are detectives, so I know how things work. Even though it's a shock that Randolph committed these crimes, you separated me from someone who was hiding such awful things.
Ideally, a wife should believe in her husband's innocence. However, with them both being police officers, I knew what it meant when the police took someone away. So, that's what it is. There are still many things I don't understand, but we'll figure out the details as we go along. I took Patrick inside and had him explain what would happen next. The next day, I received a call informing me that Randolph had been arrested. Randolph had been going out for dinners and early morning fishing or golf trips to build relationships with clients. While he did go out with clients sometimes, it seems he was also lying to me and committing sexual crimes. He would hide behind cars and jump out naked in front of women walking late at night, or touch high school girls' chests as he passed by them. There were other things I can't even speak about, and it seems he even committed burglary. There were over 30 known victims. He was a habitual offender, and it's believed there are still more undiscovered crimes. I never imagined that the culprit of the molestation incidents in our neighborhood was my husband. The fact that he treated our intimate moments like a chore now made sense. He was fulfilling his desires through these crimes. I also understood why he avoided visiting my family and acted strange when Patrick said he was coming over. However, it was also true that Randolph worked seriously and achieved results at his job. Additionally, though it's embarrassing to say, he had me as his wife even without committing those crimes. I asked Patrick why Randolph continued to commit sexual crimes.
Sex crimes aren't always about sexual desire. Many people commit them to satisfy a need for control. Control. Now that you mention it, he did want to be in a higher position at work and act like a domineering husband.
He certainly had a strong desire for control. But how does that connect to sexual crimes?
By causing pain to their victims, they feel like they're controlling them. Also, since they don't physically injure or steal from the victims, some don't feel guilty, making it easier for them to become repeat offenders.
They're seriously hurting the victims.
Yeah, that's how we see it. But some people don't think that way. They might think, at least it's not physical violence. Plus, they understand it's a crime, so they get a thrill from thinking they're clever for not getting caught.
So, it's more about experiencing a thrill than satisfying sexual desire. I've heard that shoplifters often steal not for the items, but for the thrill. The psychology of criminals is quite complicated.
That thrill is problematic because it can become addictive, increasing the frequency of their crimes.
But I can't believe he would do such things.
That's exactly it. People with a desire for control often have high abilities or leadership roles that allow them to control others to some extent. They can be seen as capable and serious by those around them. So, when they're caught, it's common for people to say, "I can't believe someone like them would do such a thing."
Listening to him, I realized my reaction was just as expected. After his arrest, Randolph apparently reached settlements with the victims. By settling and showing remorse, he hoped for a lighter sentence. However, according to Patrick, the number of cases was too high for a slightly reduced sentence to avoid imprisonment. Moreover, the settlement amounts ranged from $2,000 to $3,000 per case, and with the current 30 known cases, he had lost all his money and would likely spend his days in prison. Not everyone received a settlement, but Randolph has lost all his money and will soon be facing prison time. I'm preparing for the divorce. Apparently, you can get divorced even while the other person is in prison. Through this marriage, I realized that I don't have good judgment when it comes to men. Therefore, from now on, I will focus more on my work rather than on relationships or marriage. The tie I handed over was thrown into the trash can at the corner of the room the next moment. I was dumbfounded by Mike's action.
The last thing I need is cheap trash.
Did you even check inside?
Huh?
On the other side of my astonished husband, Sarah was laughing. I met Mike's eyes before slowly shifting my gaze to Sarah.
You don't think that was from your sister, do you? Sorry, it's so cheap.
Sarah was furious. Seeing her like that, Mike was quite shaken.
No, I thought that was something Mary had prepared. As if anything prepared by Mary could just be thrown away.
I couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement at Sarah's furious figure. I'm going to expose all of Mike's actions right here. I took a deep breath. I am Mary, a 47-year-old housewife with a part-time job. Thanks to getting married almost immediately after graduating from college and having children right away, my second life has already started. Even though I say that, Mike is still actively working, and since I've been working a full-time part-time job for about 10 years, we don't go on trips or anything like that. So, honestly, this second life is just a name, and in the end, I'm living a life no different from usual. Mike and I met in college. It was a normal college, but the club activities were active, and among them, the basketball team was one of the strongest in the nation. Mike was the captain of the basketball team. Tall and well-built, he was the captain and the ace. At that time, Mike was very popular, and I, being one of the managers, thought I had no chance. But he approached me, and then he confessed his feelings. I was so happy. The proposal came when I was in my 4th year of college, with Mike already working and able to support us, asking me to marry him. My parents, having been college sweethearts themselves, didn't object, and we got married half a year into my senior year of college. It was a simple wedding, but it was well done, and I was happy. The first year after marriage was very smooth. Since the company Mike joined had frequent relocations, I decided not to become a full-time employee and continued with the part-time job I had at the time. However, I found out I was pregnant just before graduating from college, and to reassure a worried Mike, I resigned. During the pregnancy, my sister-in-law Sarah and my in-laws, who lived nearby, were very kind and helpful, and I was truly glad to have married. However, after our daughter Jane was born, our marital life gradually drifted away from the ideal. Jane, who often cried at night, would start crying unless held during the day, and as a first-time parent who knew nothing about child-rearing, I struggled to balance it with household chores. Although my in-laws and Sarah helped, there inevitably came times when I had to do it alone. Each time, I would hide and cry by myself. Mike, at first, showed a supportive attitude, but gradually began to go out more often for drinks and such, and by the time Jane was 6 months old, he had completely stopped helping with the household chores. Even when I begged him to spend a little more time with Jane, he would reluctantly stay for about 10 minutes before calling me over to take her and going out himself.
Hey, I wish you could spend a little more time with Jane.
I'm busy, you know. When I said that, Mike would sigh heavily and condescendingly lecture me.
You wouldn't understand since you've never been out in society, but being an adult is tough. I need to refresh on my days off to survive. Understand?
I absolutely despised the way Mike lightly tapped my head as he said that. However, it's true that Mike was providing for us, and it's also true that I didn't know society. So, every time he said that, I would swallow my words, and eventually, I stopped asking Mike for anything. Thus, Mike continued a life that hardly resembled that of a caring father, only paying attention to Jane when it suited him, for over 20 years. But then he began to take an active interest in Jane. Jane, let's go out.
Okay.
Every weekend, I would see the two of them off as they went out together, and I would take care of the household chores. Thanks to starting a part-time job about 10 years ago, we had a bit more financial leeway, but chores would pile up, so I had to clean and prepare meals in advance during the weekends. Up until about 3 years ago, Jane was on my side. She would help out and give me presents. But ever since she started going out with him, she completely became Mike's ally. The reason was simple: Mike would buy her something every week. Jane, coming home with shopping bags full of new clothes and accessories in both hands, initially confused but now delightedly heads straight to her room to have her own fashion show.
Buying her expensive things every week might be a bit much.
Huh?
Are you jealous of Jane?
Can't help it. She's cuter than a middle-aged woman like you, Mike said with a laugh and went to Jane's room. Indeed, Jane is lively and bright like Mike, and beautiful. She probably knows it, too, with looks that wouldn't be out of place on a celebrity. As for me, it's inevitable that I'd be called plain. But I am only 45 years old. I shouldn't be referred to as a middle-aged woman. Angered, I decided to confront Mike and Jane and headed to Jane's room. But just as I was about to open the door, I overheard a shocking conversation.
Dad, this is really cute.
Thank you. It suits you. Just like my daughter.
Tell Emma thanks, too. I've wanted something matching with her.
Emma is beautiful, too. The clerk said we looked like a beautiful mother and daughter today.
Really? That makes me happy.
I couldn't understand what the two of them were talking about. Beautiful mother and daughter? Who and who? Weren't they going out together every week? I was dumbfounded, my hand still on the doorknob. I couldn't even wipe away the tears rolling down my cheeks, my body wouldn't move. Unaware of me, Jane and Mike laughed and talked about their next outing. I couldn't stand how much I hated them. The next day, I stopped by a detective agency on my way home from my part-time job. The clerk there was very kind, and I ended up pouring out everything I had been holding in. And just like that, I contracted them to investigate Mike and his activities. Months later, when I received the investigation results, I was dumbfounded. Mike was meeting his mistress nearly every day, and on weekends, he would take Jane on long trips. As I read further, even more shocking details came to light.
You've got to be kidding.
I was furious at Mike's incredibly disloyal actions. I couldn't forgive him. I would have my revenge. Just then, a message arrived on my mobile phone. It was from Sarah, asking if I would like to join them at the in-laws' house to celebrate Mike's promotion. I hadn't heard a word about Mike getting a promotion, but I resolved to reply to Sarah with my acceptance. I didn't want to buy a gift for the celebration, but it would be strange if I was the only one who didn't bring anything. With that in mind, I decided to let Sarah help me pick something out. The tie we bought from a high-brand store that makes custom suits cost $300.
We'll put it in a plain paper bag so he won't immediately realize what's inside. It's a surprise. I hope he'll be happy.
Yes, indeed. Imagining the joy on her brother's face, Sarah seemed excited, which made me feel a bit guilty, but my desire for revenge on Mike was stronger. I proceeded with my plan. And on the day of Mike's promotion celebration, seeing the plain paper bag I was holding as we left the house, Mike clearly looked disappointed. But he said nothing more, and we headed to the in-laws. Upon arrival, we joined Mike's parents and Sarah at the table, enjoying a pleasant meal together the whole time. Let's give him the presents now. Who wants to go first?
Me. Congratulations, Dad.
Jane handed him a brandless handkerchief. Though neatly boxed, it didn't seem very expensive. Mike received it with a smile. Unusual for brand-loving Mike. Thinking this, I took the box containing the tie out of the paper bag and handed it to Mike. Congratulations on your promotion. This is from me and... The tie I handed over was thrown into the trash can at the corner of the room the next moment. I was dumbfounded by Mike's action.
I don't need cheap trash.
Did you even check inside?
Huh?
Sarah was laughing on the other side of my astonished husband. I met Mike's eyes before slowly shifting my gaze to Sarah.
You don't think that was from your sister, do you? Sorry, it's so cheap.
Sarah was furious. Seeing her like that, Mike was quite shaken.
I thought that was something Mary had prepared. As if anything prepared by Mary could just be thrown away.
I couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement at Sarah's furious figure. I'm going to expose all of Mike's actions right here. I took a deep breath. Sarah, it's okay. I don't mind.
But...
Really, it's okay.
After all, I don't need a gift from someone I'm divorcing.
Everyone present was shocked by my words. Mike was trembling, but still tried to calm himself and spoke to me in a soothing voice.
Divorce? I admit I went too far just now. I'll apologize. It's not just about what happened now.
You know that, don't you? Mike was puzzled, unable to grasp my real intention. Amidst this, Jane's carefree voice could be heard.
It's fine if they get divorced. It's none of my business anyway.
Jane.
Susan chided Jane as she twirled her long hair, but Jane didn't stop.
I mean, being told that someone who barely went out into society and is just an ordinary middle-aged woman is my mother doesn't make me happy. I'd be much happier with someone who understands fashion.
Jane was probably referring to Mike's mistress. Unaware that I knew about it, Mike looked a bit awkward, to whom I smiled.
Right, Emma, was it? She would make Jane happier, wouldn't she? How do you know about Emma?
Mike panicked when Emma's name, his mistress, suddenly came out of my mouth. Next to him, Jane's attitude remained unchanged. I spoke sarcastically to the two of them.
You've lost your love for me and want to remarry, right? Unfortunately, I don't have such a partner or the time.
No, well... Mike suddenly became hesitant as everyone's gaze focused on him. Jane, perhaps realizing something was off, stopped playing with her hair and looked at Mike.
Making up reasons for cheating and making Jane believe them, you really don't want to look bad, do you? What do you mean?
Jane confronted Mike, puzzled. After all, Mike had told Jane that I was cheating and considering divorce. When Emma was introduced, he said it was still a secret because I was reluctant to divorce, but he intended to marry her as soon as possible. My head hurt when I found out. I had never cheated, and the only reason I was rarely home was because of increased part-time job hours. Lying and bribing your daughter with gifts is the lowest a parent could go.
Dad, you said Mom was cheating, and you wanted a divorce but she was refusing, right? Was that a lie?
It's not a lie, but...
If it's not a lie, then why is Mom so confident?
Jane's shrill voice echoed in the room. I responded calmly. It was more convenient to deceive you.
That way, it would be easier to see Jane after the divorce, or for him to return to his parents' house, probably for reasons like that. It's a lie, a lie.
Jane repeated it's a lie as if she couldn't believe my words. Mike was pale and frozen. I handed him the divorce papers.
Wait on the divorce.
You plan to marry Emma, right?
Jane seems to get along with her, so there shouldn't be a problem. But we've been married for over 20 years. There are feelings. What you have isn't feelings for me, but for the money you don't want to part with is alimony, right?
When I spoke plainly, Mike grimaced and glared at me. Even if he was hit right on the mark, he was no longer the man I once admired, just a middle-aged man. I realized then that his love for me was gone.
Is that true?
Sarah's voice echoed in the quiet room. Mike started to tremble. In this house, the most frightening person isn't the in-laws but Sarah. Sarah, who had been cheated on in her youth and had broken off an engagement, has remained single since. Unlike Mike, Sarah graduated from a top university and was so beautiful that men constantly pursued her even after her engagement was broken off. But Sarah rejected them all.
You know how much I despise men who cheat, right?
Yes.
Then why did you do this? What did you want to achieve by hurting Mary?
Sarah spoke calmly, but a quiet anger could be felt in her voice, silencing not just Mike but everyone in the room. Mike was so pale and trembling, he looked as if he might collapse.
What you can do now is sign the divorce papers, pay the compensation, and then cut ties with our family. Got it? Cut ties? Why? Because I don't want a despicable man to be part of the family.
Shocked by Sarah's words, Mike hung his head. It must have been hard for Mike, who has a bit of a sister complex. He signed the divorce papers and then started crying softly, his body shaking.
Mary is the one who should be crying. You have no right to cry.
Sarah's words were like a final blow, and Mike had no response. I presented another document to Mike, delivering the final strike.
Emma left this for you. You met with Emma?
Mike, who perked up at Emma's name, panicked upon seeing the contents of the document I presented. It was about the compensation claims.
What do you mean by compensation claims?
Well, you lied about being single, right?
Ah.
Mike had completely forgotten that he had lied. In fact, Mike and Emma met at a high-end hotel's matchmaking party. where Mike had forged documents to attend as a single man and approached Emma. He even went as far as to say that the reason for his divorce was his ex-wife's cheating, claiming the divorce was finalized but his ex-wife wouldn't leave, causing trouble for him and his daughter, but she was just doing housekeeping now, so he was dealing with it as hiring a housekeeper. He continued to say that once a new partner was found, his ex-wife would give up on reconciliation and leave, asking Emma to wait a bit longer. When I heard this from Emma herself, I was furious. After showing her our marriage certificate and explaining that we were not divorced and I had not cheated, Emma apologized repeatedly. She offered to pay compensation, but I had no intention of claiming it since she had been misled into thinking Mike was single. Emma has a message for you. Never show your face to her again. Ah. Mike must have been planning to have Emma support him financially in exchange for paying me compensation. His expression was one of utter despair. Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Jane apologized from next to a silent Mike. I have no need for a daughter who can't distinguish right from wrong at 25 and disrespects her mother. No need to apologize. Mom. Once the divorce is finalized, leave my house. Why? Jane asked, to which I sighed. The house we lived in was actually in my name. It was left to me when a relative passed away, and I became the owner when Mike and I started living there. I had mentioned this to Jane before, but she seemed to have completely forgotten. Your attitude towards your mother is unforgivable, and the period for reconciliation has passed. I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave with your dad. I'll apologize. Come on, Mom. Let's live together again. Please. Jane screamed in desperation, but I looked at her coldly. Then, Susan, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Mike and Jane, please never come back here again. But Mom. Mike looked up at Susan's words. Susan was furious. Seeing her like that, Mike couldn't hide his shock and started crying heavily. Jane was just frozen, shocked by the usually gentle Susan's transformation. I don't want to talk to people who hurt others like you do. Please leave. So, after Susan's declaration, Joe, my father-in-law, stood up, grabbed Mike by his clothes, forced him to stand, and dragged him to the front door, pushing him out of the house. Mike initially banged on the door and shouted to be let in, but as neighbors started to gather, he eventually left with Jane. In the quiet of the in-laws' house, now that Mike and Jane were gone, I savored the coffee and cake Susan offered, enjoying some peace for the first time in a while. After that, I submitted the divorce papers. With the compensation from Mike, I've become somewhat wealthy. As for Mike, not only did I take all his hidden savings, but his forgery at the matchmaking party became widely known after a colleague who had also attended the party exposed him at work. As a result, he lost his credibility and, despite his recent promotion, was sidelined. Jane made a big mistake at work and, although she wasn't fired, her salary was significantly cut. Moreover, I heard she got involved with a married coworker and is currently being sued for compensation by his wife. I couldn't help but think of them as two peas in a pod, almost feeling detached from their plight. The two of them have been living together after being kicked out of the house. However, since I did all the household chores, neither of them knows how to manage a home. The house is a mess. They constantly eat out due to their inability to cook, which has drained their finances, and they seem to argue every day. Emma, after breaking up with Mike, married her childhood friend. I've heard through the grapevine that she's now the mother of twins. Despite being deeply hurt by Mike, it's comforting to know she has moved on to a happier future. I was relieved. I was worried that my relationship with my in-laws and Sarah would end because of Mike's actions, but we're still close. Sarah says I'm her sister, and something like this won't sever our bond. I'm grateful to be part of such a kind family. And, surprisingly, Sarah has recently found a boyfriend. He's 5 years older than her, a kind man who managed to soften Sarah's firm resolve against marriage. Susan, who sneakily bought a bridal magazine. It's a secret. And was reading it in her room, shared her secret with me, looking so endearing it warmed my heart. As for me, I was offered a full-time position at the company where I was working part-time and have been working hard. Life is as busy as ever, but living for myself alone is quite enjoyable. Selling the house and starting to live on my own was a shock, especially since all my belongings fit into just one cardboard box. Now, I'm gradually acquiring furniture that suits my taste. Living surrounded by things I love makes me incredibly happy, and no matter how busy I am, coming home always rejuvenates me, fueling my energy for the next day. I even think to myself that I should have done this much sooner. Recently, a coworker offered to give me a cat. The idea of living with a cat doesn't sound too bad. With these thoughts in my mind, I'm determined to live my life in my own way today as well.
Dad, that person is scary.
At a bread-making class I was attending with my grandchild, a little girl I didn't know was frightened by me. But there was a good reason for it. What I was actually glaring at with all my might was my son, and the fact that he had an unavoidable commitment was one thing, but it was clearly odd for an unknown little girl to call my son Dad, especially when he had his own child. This situation led to the worst possible betrayal I could imagine, and it was not something I could just let slide. My son noticed my gaze and instantly became suspiciously nervous.
Yikes!
Even though he was pale and breaking out in a cold sweat, that did nothing to clear my suspicions, so I approached him.
Can we have a talk when we get home? Yes. But please keep it a secret from Kate.
You think that's going to work?
Eek!
Faced with my determination, my son could only shrink away. I, Jane, am 60 years old, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for my adorable 8-year-old granddaughter, Mary. I have a good relationship with my daughter-in-law Kate, and even though our connection is only by marriage, I think of her as my own daughter. It's not just because of this fact alone that I favor Kate, but she has a condition that makes it difficult for her to have children. She went through what can only be described as a grueling effort, namely fertility treatments, to give birth to Mary. I will never forget her gratitude for that. It's only natural that Kate, who had struggled so much, adored her daughter greatly. I had never heard of any discord between her and my son, Mike, and I supported them as well. Everything should have been fine, but an entirely unexpected situation was unfolding behind the scenes, unbeknownst to me. It was around the time Mary started elementary school when I received a troubled call from Kate.
Jane, I've actually decided to start working.
There's no reason to object, but what brought this on all of a sudden?
Mike told me. He said his salary got cut and we're struggling financially, so he asked for my help.
Well, given the times, it can't be helped.
At that time, I was convinced, and Kate had decided to take up a part-time job during the day, which is fine, but since Mike is also working, he's not around during the day, so someone has to look after the child, meaning the grandchild.
I'm sorry, Jane, for causing you trouble.
Don't be shy. You do your part for the household. Grandma, let's play.
In fact, my granddaughter Mary is very adorable, and I thought I could give everything for this child's happiness. However, the problem is my son, Mike, who was very reluctant to take care of his own child. I was hoping at least on his days off, but it seems Mike is often away from home, and there have been increasing conflicts with Kate. One day, she came to my house with her child, looking angry, and said,
Mike is just terrible. He could at least look after Mary a little. But all he says is that it's my job.
I'm not one to say, but his way of thinking is old-fashioned. I understand. I'll talk to him.
Thinking it would be unfair to burden Kate any further, especially since she had already started working and was busy, I contacted Mike on another day.
Mike, I heard from Kate. As a father, don't you think you should take a little more responsibility in parenting?
Shut up.
Don't meddle in family matters.
Saying it in such an annoying and bothersome manner, I was angry, but I couldn't back down.
Listen to what people are saying. Don't you care about your daughter?
Yeah, she's important. Super important. Mom, you don't have to worry about a thing. It was all superficial, or rather, there was no intention to listen at all. It's almost admirable how casual the response can be. I realized it was futile to say anything more, so I had no choice but to back down. If only things had ended there, but then, at another time, I received this concern from Kate. Trouble is, Jane.
It seems our family issues have become the talk of the neighborhood. How did you find out?
I overheard it.
Some mom friends were talking about our house.
Thinking about how difficult it is to suppress rumors, I just felt sorry for Kate. Blaming everything on Mike left me feeling helpless and, once again, I couldn't contain my anger. Then, on a holiday when our grandchild had reached the 3rd grade, Kate had to work due to her shift, and we couldn't go to the amusement park as initially planned, she informed me. I thought Mike would take care of Mary, but then, as if it was the most natural thing, our son declared,
"I've got an important errand, so I'll be out. Take care of Mary for me, Mom."
I was outraged by his irresponsibility but decided to take care of my granddaughter that day. While pondering how to spend the day with my granddaughter, I found out from a flyer in the newspaper that a neighboring town was holding a bread-making workshop as part of a community festival. Mary loves bread and has been saying since she was little that she wants to be a baker. There's likely no disagreement that it's good to let children experience their interests from an early age. Moreover, considering the bad rumors spreading about my son's family in our neighborhood, the fact that the neighboring town was convenient and accepting walk-ins was truly fortunate. So, my granddaughter and I decided to participate in the bread-making workshop in the neighboring town. The workshop was bustling, not just with mothers but also fathers and even children like me brought along by their grandparents. However, the joy of baking bread with my grandchild became utterly irrelevant. Incredibly, there was a man who seemed to be Mike among the participants. I initially thought it was a mistake because he was with a girl.
Dad, I did it.
Good job, that's great. Well done. His voice was unmistakably similar, or rather, there was no mistaking him, but the fact that the girl was calling Mike Dad was undeniably odd. Even after casually changing angles to check, there was no doubt it was Mike, and the only conclusion I could draw from the facts was the worst kind of betrayal. Feeling purely and utterly unable to forgive rather than questioning his nerve shouldn't be surprising. When I glared at Mike with all my might, it was the girl who noticed first.
That person looks scary.
Eh? Who? The moment carefree Mike noticed me, his face contorted, and he became visibly nervous.
"Just wait here for a moment, Mary."
Okay.
Feeling relieved that my grandchild was obedient at this moment, I approached Mike.
Scary.
My anger must have been intense. The girl, who seemed to be his secret child, backed away a bit, which made me feel somewhat sorry for her, so I spoke to her gently. "I'm sorry.
I just want to talk to your dad."
Okay.
She seemed to understand quickly. Putting aside the secret child, I calmly said to a pale-faced Mike,
"Can we have a thorough talk later?" Yikes!
His panic-suggested guilt was undeniable. Then, in a whisper, my son said,
"Let's keep this a secret from Kate."
It sounded so absurd that it went beyond disbelief to being almost comically pathetic.
You think that kind of request is going to work? Yikes!
I don't know what kind of face I was making at the time, but I must have looked scared because I was furious. Mike had lost all color in his face. Mary and I, having had enough of our bread-making experience, went home and immediately reported to Kate.
What the heck is that?
I could painfully understand Kate's astonishment over the phone, and it seemed there was no shaking the fact that Mike was to blame, no matter how you looked at it. Just wait a sec, Jane. I'll wrap up work and have Mary looked after by a mom friend. Is Mike coming?
I'll call him now. I'll make sure he comes, no matter what.
After ending the call with Kate, I summoned Mike.
Come here right now. Don't think you have the right to refuse.
Understood. I'll head over immediately. Perhaps because my words were filled with anger, it was clear even over the phone that Mike had turned pale. Soon after, Kate arrived, and since Mary was already with a mom friend, the biggest issue of not wanting to expose our granddaughter to a family crisis was gone. Then, Mike arrived, already sweating profusely and even his lips trembling.
Mike, can you explain what that was all about?
It was just a coincidence. Kind of got mistaken for the dad and just went with the flow. It was a desperate excuse, and even if it were true, it didn't explain why our son was so pale. A coincidence, huh? Then why are you so pale?
You don't have anything to hide, right? There must be a reason you can't stand tall, huh?
Kate's words were cold, but at least in this situation, her tone was acceptable.
Mike, you did say it, right? Keep it a secret from Kate. That means it's a relationship that's bad if discovered, right? Yeah, I said that. So why does she know, and why am I being interrogated now?
Mike's attitude, almost aggressively defensive, was disgraceful. I couldn't see any reason why I should dutifully help conceal a secret in the first place.
Are you stupid? Blaming Kate when it's clearly your own fault. Aren't you ashamed? In a way, it's a remarkable display of defiance.
So?
You think refusing to elaborate is an excuse that will work? Damn it!
Frustrated, Mike finally confessed the truth.
What did you say?
Damn. Knowing the revealed truth left me speechless, and Kate, not exploding in anger, made it clear her fury had reached its peak. The fact Mike disclosed was that upon learning Kate was infertile, he quickly gave up on her, started an affair, fathered a daughter with the other woman, and began leaving home frequently to visit his mistress's house. Worse still, the reason he had Kate start working wasn't due to a decrease in his salary, but because he needed more money for child support for his illegitimate child.
For what reason?
Worse still, the reason he had her start working wasn't due to a decrease in his salary, but because he needed more money for child support for his illegitimate child. Despite undergoing difficult fertility treatments, she was easily betrayed by her husband, who then used the money she worked hard to earn for his mistress and their child. It felt as if Kate had been sacrificed and exploited, making it not only tragic but deeply unfair to her son.
Why didn't you tell me until now?
This question was the last bit of kindness left in me, but even this small kindness was soon to be betrayed. That is, Mike said that around the same time the affair partner's pregnancy came to light, Kate's fertility treatment succeeded, and she became pregnant with Mary, which made it difficult for him to reveal the truth. Furthermore, continuing on, when he told his mistress about Kate's pregnancy, she flew into a rage and demanded he build a home with her instead, making it even harder for him to return home. There's no room for sympathy here, it's clear the son is in the wrong. After hearing his excuses, Kate remained stoic, but it was clear from the atmosphere that she was furious enough to involve the police. I'm divorcing you.
Any objections?
Kate's voice, eerily calm and resonating as if from the depths, left no room for refusal or struggle.
I never thought you could be such a fool. I fully support Kate. Of course, you and your mistress will be paying compensation, right?
What? Why?
I'm appalled. Mike, do you even understand what you've done?
Even a legal novice like me can see this. The emotional distress alone warrants compensation. Naturally, I'll have custody of Mary.
I'm ashamed to call someone like you my son. Consider this a disownment.
I firmly resolved never to support Mike with a single cent again.
So, you think the mistress is more important even she's forcing you?
Fine, remarry her if you think so.
Yeah, I will.
It was clear Mike was acting recklessly, but there was no sympathy to be had. Yet, the situation took an unexpected turn. The divorce with Kate was finalized, and she successfully gained custody of Mary. Some time after the compensation was paid, Mike, who was supposed to have been disowned, showed up at our house with a woman he hadn't introduced before, unabashedly saying,
"Hey, I'm here to start anew today. Haven't introduced her yet. This is Emma. She's..."
"Hello, Jane. I've brought another adorable grandchild."
"Hello, Grandma."
The cheeky girl she was with was indeed the same one I saw at the bread-making class that day. But what kind of nerve does one need to have to come here?
"Life's been tough because of the compensation payments, so I thought we'd come to stay at Mom's house."
"Nice to meet you. I've given birth to a precious grandchild, so I have a right to live here, don't I?"
"Without a home, we'd be in trouble, and I think Grandma has a duty to support us."
I found myself clapping my hands at the three of them for their carefreeness, irresponsibility, brazenness, and lack of common sense.
"You guys are amazing.
Really, truly amazing.
Don't be shy."
It's not that big of a deal."
Flattered to be praised.
The three of them, pretending to be shy, seemed so out of this world that I even wondered if Mike was not related by blood, and with such audacity, I felt absolutely no compassion for them. This house is spacious, so it's perfectly fine to have 3 more people, right? I was so shocked that I couldn't utter a single word. Of course, Kate, who happened to be at the house that day, felt the same. And then Mike said something even more astonishing.
"Let's get along. Having a sister, even with a different mother, must be nice for Mary, right? Go home."
"Why?"
"Never come back."
Kate's words were filled with a strong tone.
Understood.
"Excuse us.
Goodbye."
Finally, the unwelcome guests left. After that, Kate raised her daughter on her own. I took care of all the financial aspects, but it never bothered me.
I'm sorry, Jane.
No need to apologize. Kate, you've done enough. What kind of parents wouldn't support their child?
She is very serious, and I truly regret that our relationship is only official on paper. Just as if to bother that happiness, I kept getting persistent, whiny calls from Mike.
"Why do you always favor Kate and them over me? I'm out of money at my place, Mom. Help me."
I couldn't say anything to Mike, who shirked his responsibilities and complained it wouldn't make a difference because he wouldn't understand anyway.
"There's no reason for me to be kind to you." "And what am I supposed to do then?"
"I don't know."
"Why don't you look up the word responsibility in the dictionary? Is that what a parent says? Help me. Emma gets angry easily these days and then sides with Mom. At this rate, our family will fall apart."
Why should I have to worry about the household of a man who has become a stranger? Mike's naive thought that everything would be okay if he relied on me was just appalling.
"That's why it's none of my business anymore." What's with that attitude?
Even when scolded, He talks as if receiving help was a given, and I was just tired of it. Yet, any hope for Mike's reformation would end up being betrayed.
Mom, could you prepare some child support for Anne? She's your granddaughter, after all. Can't you at least take care of her?
Indeed, she is my granddaughter by relation, but that doesn't mean I have an obligation to care for her or provide assistance.
Why should I have to take care of a child made as a result of betraying Kate? She's still your granddaughter, isn't she? Help out. I don't want to hear that from a traitor. Maybe you should reflect on what you've done. It's all Kate's fault in the first place, isn't it?
He's now blaming Kate? She had done nothing wrong. This word made me more than angry. I thought he had crossed a line that should never be crossed.
Be quiet. If you insult her any further, I'll call the police.
Police?
Why the hell for that? Don't joke with me. Save your sleep talk for when you're actually asleep.
Who's joking now? I was furious and hung up the phone immediately, then reported him to the police. Even if it was just speculation, Mike's behavior felt like it could violate the anti-stalking laws. And even if it didn't, his relentless, misguided attempts at contact were a nuisance worth reporting to the police, regardless of the legal specifics. I don't know what happened to Mike after that, nor did I see any value in finding out. It seemed pointless. However, the police did inform us that he had been taken in, and we didn't need to worry anymore. Kate continued to raise Mary diligently, and although I didn't see my granddaughter as often, I made sure to visit and deepen our bond. My only concern was that she had become a single mother, though that's hardly unusual these days. Still, it was clear she'd face more challenges than most, and while it's ultimately up to her, I've considered finding and introducing her to a more sincere partner eventually. But for now, things have settled, my relationship with her remains strong, and my granddaughter is growing up healthy. I've decided to simply savor this joy.
Why are you even here?
I smiled sweetly at my husband, who was pointing and yelling at me, sitting at the attorney's bench in the courtroom. My husband, causing a commotion, was cautioned by the judge. He reluctantly fell silent, but his eyes were still glaring fiercely.
It's your fault for having an affair and getting sued for alimony in this divorce case. To think it even led to a trial.
As I calmly pointed to the evidence and cornered my husband, he slumped, utterly dejected.
But this trial is not the end.
I will pursue you relentlessly. Be prepared. I murmured quietly to myself. My name is Scott, I'm 48 years old and a lawyer. I married my husband George 21 years ago. He runs a company, and we were both busy with work, so we chose a child-free life. Instead, we made as much time as possible for each other, going to movies and traveling. George once dreamt of becoming a movie director. Though that dream never materialized, he started a video production company after we got married. In recent years, he became busy with a new venture, and before I knew it, our time together had dwindled. Still, as a couple in our late 40s, I thought this was to be expected and didn't worry much about it. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine he was having an affair. The future I vaguely envisioned, growing old together, was suddenly shattered.
Scott, can you take over this case for me? Thanks.
3 months ago, my boss assigned me a divorce case involving a claim for alimony. Our law firm handles many divorce cases, so it wasn't an unusual assignment. If the husband is cheating, he should just settle the alimony before it goes to trial. In this case, the husband is suing his wife for divorce and alimony due to her affair, and also making claims against her lover. The divorce is already settled, and the wife has finished paying the alimony. However, the issue is with her lover, a company president with substantial wealth, who insists he's not responsible and refuses to pay the alimony. Initially, another lawyer in my firm was handling this case, but he got swamped with other matters, and it was passed to me since I had some free time. During the handover, Paul apologetically mentioned.
This guy is quite a piece of work. Looks down on everyone else.
That statement had slightly bothered me. A tricky cheater, huh? I wonder what kind of person he is. As I was going through the documents handed to me to check the defendant. To my astonishment, the name written there was George. My husband. It seems neither my boss nor my colleagues had realized this. What does this mean? He was having an affair behind my back? I double-checked the documents several times, thinking it might be someone with the same name, but the workplace matched his company, and even the birth date and address were correct. I remembered, a few months ago, he who were back home unusually early asked me.
Your firm handles a lot of divorce cases, right?
Yes, but why?
A friend of mine is in trouble. He's been sued for alimony over an affair, and he's not happy with the amount. What happens if he doesn't want to pay?
Usually, they start with a lawyer and try to settle, but if that fails, it'll go to civil mediation if it's between a husband and the affair partner.
Oh? So it doesn't go straight to court?
It can, but most people don't want to because it's costly and time-consuming. So, many give up and settle even after going through mediation.
Huh. So you don't have to pay?
Come to think of it, there was a precedent where they didn't have to pay even after going to the Supreme Court.
I forgot when it was.
What? You don't have to pay even if it goes to court?
At that moment, his peculiar delight made me feel uneasy.
But if someone's breaking up a family, they should make amends, I think. Who's this friend?
You wouldn't know him, Scott.
No matter how much I asked, he refused to disclose the friend's name. Was that conversation actually about himself? Unbelievable. I was so happy that night, thinking we could finally have dinner together after a long time. It seemed he only wanted information that would benefit him. According to the documents, the affair between my husband and the other woman started 5 years ago when she was hired as an accountant at his company. That was about the time he started saying he was busy with a new business, leading to more overtime and business trips. So that was it. But I also didn't notice the changes in my husband as my workload increased with more cases to handle. The affair came to light 6 months ago when the other woman's husband found out. The discussion between the woman, her husband, and the distribution of property, and the amount of alimony in the divorce case caused some friction, but it was quickly resolved through mediation by a colleague lawyer and didn't go to court. However, around the same time, the husband filed a claim for alimony against George, the affair partner.
I don't want to pay.
He refused. He dodged the issue during mediation as well, refusing to acknowledge any responsibility for the alimony. I never imagined he would use the information I gave him in such a way, and anger surged within me.
So, he was cheating and using me all along. I won't let this go easily.
That's why I decided to divorce him and press on relentlessly. In situations like this, lawyers are not supposed to handle cases involving their own family members. But there's an exception if the client agrees. I immediately contacted the client, Randy.
You're George's wife?
The next day, at the cafe where we met, Randy was quite surprised as I explained the situation.
Yes. And with your consent, I'd like to handle this case. Wouldn't that mean you'd conduct the trial favorably for your husband? That will absolutely not happen. Because once this trial is resolved, I plan to immediately file for divorce myself.
I have no intention of being cheated on and just letting it slide. I plan to fight back, as a wife and as a lawyer, with my pride on the line.
If you're that determined, please, take the case.
Randy, sensing my resolve, officially asked me to represent him. But George has been consistently refusing to pay the alimony. It's terrible considering he's a wealthy company president and not in need of money. I'm not after the alimony. I want him to properly apologize for destroying our family. Randy clenched his fists and bit his lip in frustration. The discussion between Randy and his wife about the distribution of property already favored him due to the affair admission and photographic evidence, so the matter was already settled.
I really wanted to end all this as quickly as possible and forget about it. But I just can't let it go like this. Your feelings are completely justified.
George, being a business owner, is clever and can talk his way out of anything. I'm just a simple salaryman, can I even compete?
Not at all. People who believe they are clever often make trivial mistakes in unexpected places. I will make sure to corner him, just leave it to me.
Our marriage wasn't going well to begin with, and he even said he doesn't see the point in paying alimony. That wasn't the case. If George hadn't laid a hand on my wife, we would have been fine. The frustration in Randy's tone was palpable. Naturally, no one wants to go through a costly and time-consuming trial. George probably looks down on Randy, a company employee, thinking he can get away with anything because he's a wealthy president. That's what I felt. George was kind and wonderful before our marriage. But after he became independent and started his own business 15 years ago, money started flowing in, and he gradually changed. The places we dined at shifted from local bars to upscale restaurants, and eventually, he started saying that those who eat at cheap places are poor. Whenever I admonished him, he initially blushed and apologized, but eventually,
"These are bottom feeders who can't even start their own business,"
he started saying. His company was thriving, and perhaps he got carried away. But success in business isn't always a given. As a lawyer, having seen many who failed yet managed to recover, I believed he would eventually come to realize this. Yet, he seems to have become more arrogant than I ever imagined. Luckily, or unfortunately, he's still unaware that I know about his affair.
Just watch, I won't let this go.
I contacted someone to gather compelling evidence against him, and prepared meticulously for days for the trial. On the day of the court hearing, as I sat in the courtroom with Randy, George entered, pointed at me, and yelled,
"Why are you even here?" "I will be representing Randy. I'm Scott, the attorney in charge. Your lawyer has been informed about the change of representation."
George glanced at his lawyer in disbelief, who nodded in confirmation.
"You probably outsourced everything to the company's legal advisor, not bothering to check who the new attorney was." "That's ridiculous. I don't accept you being in charge."
"I have the client's consent. Your consent, as the defendant, is not needed in this case."
"I don't care, change the lawyer."
He, causing a commotion, was quieted by the judge but kept glaring at me.
"It's your fault for having an affair and getting sued for alimony. To think it even led to a trial."
Throughout the trial,
"I shouldn't have to pay alimony for the affair,"
he persistently claimed.
"It's not my fault we got divorced."
Insisting on just that one point. He probably researched Supreme Court precedents based on my information. But he misunderstood them.
"There's a Supreme Court decision saying you don't have to pay, so I don't see why I should." Indeed, a previous case did dismiss a claim for alimony due to mental distress caused by an affair.
See? He sat back, smug and confident.
"Are you aware of the rest of that precedent? While it's true that alimony for mental distress was not granted, claims for alimony due to the affair itself are valid."
"What?" George, looking dumbfounded, while his lawyer scrambled to check the precedent. No company lawyer, however proficient in corporate law, can match a divorce specialist. And so, the trial concluded with him ordered to pay $30,000 in alimony for the affair. It's a court decision, so non-payment now risks liens or enforcement actions. Realizing he couldn't escape, his shoulders slumped in defeat.
"But this isn't the end.
I will continue to pursue this thoroughly. Be prepared." From that day on, he never returned home. I expected as much. So, the next day, I sent a petition for our divorce trial to his company, along with certain documents.
"Please, no more trials. I'll pay the alimony for the divorce as you demand."
A few days later, summoned by my husband, I went to his company's meeting room with a colleague lawyer. As soon as he saw me, he apologized to me.
"Oh. So you'll also properly handle the distribution of property, as I suggest."
That's Investigations revealed my husband's personal assets exceeded $5 million. This was because he cleverly funneled company money into his pocket and, unbeknownst to me, had made me a company officer, drawing a monthly salary of $8,000.
The assets you built after marriage are jointly owned, right? Splitting them would make me a millionaire. And I was an officer. I had no idea. That's a tax-saving measure every company practices. Maybe, but isn't it strange that I, the concerned party, was unaware? Is that all just for tax savings? There are quite some suspicious money movements. Maybe this lawyer here and the accountant lady knew about it?
The lawyer beside him averted his gaze upon meeting my eyes.
You realize such actions could strip you of your lawyer's license, right? I've already reported this to the Bar Association.
His lawyer turned pale and trembled, aware of the gravity of his actions.
Of course, you're prepared for the company to collapse due to these illegalities, right? I just had an affair. I apologize to you, and I've long split up with that woman. Why does the company have to go down too?
Because I am a lawyer.
I can't overlook the wrongdoings I've found.
How? And how did you get the company's internal documents? You conspired with the company's president, the legal advisor, and the accountant lady to commit fraud. But there are still people in the company who can't tolerate such corruption.
The person I had contacted before was the company's vice president. He had supported George and built up the company from the start, but could no longer bear his changing nature. So, when I reached out and explained the situation, he readily cooperated.
The vice president wept, hoping you'd return to your original, pure intentions. He did what? And yet, you found the vice president, who cautioned you, bothersome, and threatened to fire him. That's because he nagged me over using some company money. You too. Just because you're a lawyer, you act all high and mighty.
He lashed out at me in frustration, so I was about to say something right back, but my colleague lawyer calmed me down. Then, the colleague presented him with divorce papers and a settlement document.
If you sign these divorce papers and the agreement now, we can avoid a trial.
So, you'll forgive everything?
Yes, I'll forgive the affair.
Fine. He, relieved to avoid a trial, signed the documents, ignoring his own lawyer's protests. Done signing.
Is this okay? Yes. But I'll report the embezzlement from this company to the police, as it's a criminal matter. What? That's not what you promised. You said you'd forgive everything.
I said I'd forgive the affair.
How many times do I have to say it? As a lawyer, there's no way I'd overlook a cover-up.
He seemed to want to retort, but he was at a loss for words.
The upcoming trial will be tough. Need a lawyer? Oh, but I've already been asked to represent the vice president. Then, I guess I'll see you in court next time.
I declared this to him and his lawyer, then left the conference room with my colleague.
Serve you right. I'll make sure the next trial is just as thorough, so look forward to it.
My colleague gave a wry smile as I silently celebrated with a small fist pump.
That's what he gets for underestimating a lawyer wife.
I beamed a wide smile at my colleague. Thus, George and I divorced. We went through the distribution of property, but most of it was deemed not personal assets as it was illegally manipulated company funds. Subsequently, George and his lawyer were sued by the vice president for embezzlement and arrested. They are currently in trial, detained in jail due to the severity of the crime and risk of destroying evidence. It looks like they won't see daylight for a while. Even if they were released, the huge debt they'll face is evident. As for me, I didn't become a millionaire from the distribution of property from George, nor did I want to. Money earned rightfully by one's effort is sufficient. Moreover, my fulfillment as a lawyer comes from being able to help many people. I intend to continue dedicating myself to others, upholding the spirit of freedom and justice, equality and fairness.
Sucking up to your grandkid is creepy. Pensioners like you should only show up at weddings or funerals.
It happened on my adorable grandson's 4th birthday. My son's wife, in other words, my daughter-in-law said so disdainfully and nonchalantly. I just planned a dinner party to celebrate my only grandchild's birthday. Amidst that, my daughter-in-law, who has always disliked me, finally showed her true colors in front of her son. If that's what she wants, I'll gladly cut ties. Are you sure? Don't come back regretting it later, I said with a smile, revealing a certain truth to her. I am Harper, 65 years old. Recently, my husband passed away. He just turned 75 last month. He had been suffering from a chronic illness and was given a limited time to live a few years ago. Despite that, he stayed by my side for 2 years longer than the doctors predicted. I am sad that my beloved husband is no longer with me, but I am truly grateful for his efforts until the end. Thankfully, I inherited several properties from my father, so I had rental income. Even when my husband couldn't work due to his illness, we could live comfortably because of that income. Besides, even after his death, there's another reason I can live normally. That is the existence of our 2 sons. We have the eldest son Andrew, and the younger Robert. Both are married, and Andrew has a 4-year-old son, David. The fact that my sons live relatively close eases my loneliness. With my husband's funeral over, life is slowly returning to normal. One day, Andrew and his wife Madison came to visit my house. This house is also Andrew's childhood home, but he rarely visits, so I asked him what was up. What's going on? You didn't even call. I'm sorting Dad's things, and the living room's a mess. We need to talk about something important with you. It's okay if it's messy. I just want to welcome you guys properly. Oh, where's David? He's at kindergarten, so it's fine. We're coming in. Although I tried to stop them, they proceeded down the hallway. Following Andrew, Madison silently tagged along. I followed them to the living room. They were already deeply seated on the sofa, with Madison fiddling with her mobile phone, legs crossed. I wonder what this talk is about. Madison seems as grumpy as ever today. I hope it's nothing too serious. I've never had a good impression of Madison since the beginning of their marriage. She's beautiful and has a great figure, but completely lacks charm. Even my husband had a troubled look when she came to greet us for their wedding. Our relationship has been far from good. I was worried for reasons like those. I was surprised when Andrew broke the silence. Mom, I want to be clear about this. Why don't you live with us? Live together? I was taken aback by his unexpected proposal. Sensing something from my expression, he hastily explained. I know, it's shocking to hear all of a sudden. But I've been worried, Mom. Ever since Dad died, I thought you might be lonely. Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't lonely. Right? You're getting older, and living with us would be safer. You'd feel more secure with us around, right? That's true, but you guys have your own life, right? Interrupting me, he said with a broad smile. It's okay, no worries. He then took my hand and continued happily. Mom, Madison agrees with moving in together. Madison does? Actually, it was Madison who first suggested we live together. Really? Madison suggested living together? Given her attitude so far, it seemed like she didn't like me at all. Or maybe she's just not good at expressing herself? Various questions crossed my mind, but I was genuinely curious about her feelings. I turned to her and asked tentatively, Madison. Andrew said so, but is it true that you suggested we live together? It's true. I thought you might be lonely on your own. Is that so? Thank you. We thought living together would make David happy too. Don't read too much into it, okay? Though her tone was brisk, it didn't seem malicious. From the way the conversation was going, it appeared true that she suggested living together. Afterward, they kept persuading me. We're worried, so we'd like to move in with you as soon as possible. I was surprised by the sudden proposal, but since they insisted, I agreed to live together. We continued our conversation as they led, and finally decided to start living together the following week. Once the moving day was decided, they left briskly. Alone in the room, I resumed sorting my husband's belongings. While looking at family trip photos from years ago, I got lost in thought. I decided on the spot to live together, but was it really the right choice? Madison said that, but adding 3 people suddenly to this house, where it was just my husband and me. But living together with Andrew's family, that's a happy thing, right? I tried to convince myself that my choice wasn't wrong, though it felt almost forced. Despite my anxieties, I decided to shift my mindset toward living together. A week later, the day of their move was busy from the morning. The movers arrived while I was eating lunch, as they hadn't informed me of the time. In a rush to help with the moving, Andrew and the others were nowhere to be seen. In the end, I had to direct the movers on my own. Several hours later, they finally arrived.
I wish you had told me if you were going to be late.
I told Andrew, but Madison retorted before he could. Excuse me, but unlike you, we're busy, you know?
You're always home and has time to spare, so be a little flexible.
But there was so much stuff. It was really hard to direct the movers alone.
We're offering to live with you, and you complain about this? Harper, you don't realize how lucky you are.
I didn't mean.
Whatever, we're tired, so please get dinner ready. Saying that, she lay on the living room sofa and started playing games. Her drastic change from her usual quiet demeanor left me stunned. Confused, I approached Andrew and asked in a low voice.
Andrew, Madison suggested living together, right? Because she was worried about me being alone.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we moved in early.
But what she just said. You heard it too, right? It doesn't sound like she's worried about me.
Just let it go. Mom, don't do anything unnecessary. Just listen to what Madison says and do what you want.
Andrew.
He wouldn't even make eye contact. At that moment, I began to feel uneasy. 2 weeks after we started living together, my fears soon became a reality. My conversations with Andrew, who had said he was worried, were minimal. Madison had quit her part-time job, which she had held until the move. Becoming a housewife didn't mean she helped with housework. She just lazed around the house every day, not even touching the laundry. From grocery shopping to cooking, to cleaning every room, everything was left to me. Even if I asked Andrew, he wouldn't say anything to her, perhaps afraid of being disliked. So, I decided to speak up to her directly.
Madison, I hate to ask, but could you at least take care of your own things and help out with the housework?
What? Harper, are you ordering me around?
It's not an order. It's just that the current situation is too much for me.
I don't care. Aren't you grateful that we're living with you? Just so you know, Harper, you are lucky. You should be aware of that. She dismissed my words mockingly, not taking them seriously. At a loss for words, she added one more thing.
Oh, by the way, David's birthday is coming up, so please book a nice restaurant. No casual eateries or anything like that.
Madison, you just want to use me for your convenience.
What are you talking about? It's for David.
You should be happy to celebrate your grandson's birthday, right?
But still.
Anyway, please do it.
If you don't make a reservation, I'll tell David it's his grandmother's fault.
How could you?
With those threatening words, she laughed with a sarcastic smile. And she left the living room, looking down on me. What's going on? Wanting to live together because they're worried, that was a lie. She just wants to use me. Using David as a threat is unbelievable. A rebellious spirit grew within me against her. But thinking of David, I couldn't put my feelings first. Reluctantly, I decided to book a certain restaurant for my dear grandson. The restaurant was one of the properties I had inherited from my father. When I signed the contract, I was made the nominal owner at the suggestion of the restaurant. I called the restaurant and explained the situation, and they agreed to open a private room. I just want to have a wonderful time with everyone for my grandson's birthday. With that thought, I buried my complex feelings towards Madison deep in my heart. A month later, David's birthday arrived. Andrew, Madison, David, and I went to the reserved restaurant. We were shown to a private room and handed menus. Seeing the prices listed, Andrew and Madison exchanged surprised looks. Apparently, since they had never been to such a place, they started to complain quietly.
It's too expensive. This price is ridiculous.
Indeed, that restaurant was on the pricey side but offers quality to match. However, it was not just for adults. They also had delicious dishes that children could enjoy. I was sure David will be delighted. Thinking so, I had reserved a birthday cake over the phone. I smiled at David, who was fidgeting excitedly. "David, today is your birthday, so you can order whatever you like."
Really, Grandma? Can I?
"Of course. They have your favorite hamburgers and gratin. Pick whatever you like."
Yay! Thanks, Grandma.
His unclouded smile instantly purified my heart. On the other hand, his parents were glaring at me the whole time. When it comes to ordering, they chose the cheapest pasta. When I asked if that was all they wanted, they nodded reluctantly. I wanted them to enjoy something delicious, so I selected some of my recommended dishes like appetizers, salads, carpaccio, and a meat main course. As I ordered, they looked at me incredulously, probably thinking they had to pay. In fact, I had been only asked by Madison to reserve the place. But wanting to treat everyone to that restaurant's food, I had no intention of making them pay. I just wanted my grandson to enjoy delicious food and have a happy time on his birthday. When I use the restaurant, I don't pay the bill. Instead, the amount I spend on meals is deducted from the monthly rent. No need to worry about money. With that thought, we waited for the food to arrive. During that time, Andrew and Madison hardly spoke, just whispering to each other. Usually, Madison interrupts, so I took that chance to fully enjoy my time with David. Several hours later, the meal ended, and finally, the cake was brought in. At the sight of the impressive cake, David exclaimed in delight,
"Wow!"
In contrast to my joyful grandson, his parents wore bitter expressions. Thinking that their mood was ruining the birthday party, I called the waiter and ordered a dessert platter for the adults. Hearing that, Madison burst out with her face turning red.
Hey! Can you stop ordering whatever you want? You're just going to make us pay, right?
"What are you talking about? I never intended."
Shut up! I saw earlier you didn't bring your usual wallet. I was foolish to ask an old lady like you. I can't believe you reserved such an expensive restaurant.
"Madison, please, that's rude to the restaurant. Don't worry about the bill. And David is so happy."
Sucking up to your grandkid is creepy. Pensioners like you should only show up at weddings or funerals.
That was when I first realized. The immense anger was growing within me. I asked the waiter to take David out of the private room. Facing Andrew and Madison, I spoke in the coldest tone possible.
"Enough. How can you say such things without any remorse? Suddenly moving in, not doing housework, not contributing financially. And now you tell me to not get involved? This is no joke."
What? It's because you reserved this place. Ordering expensive items. You're just trying to get back at us, right?
This is my restaurant, you know?
What?
This is one of the properties I inherited from my father. I became the owner just in name when I signed the contract. The chef was grateful to him.
As I explained, Andrew's face turned pale. By the time I finished, he was in shock. Meanwhile, realizing she wouldn't have to pay, Madison spoke up loudly.
"Oh. So we don't have to pay? Because it's your treat."
"Yes, it is. But this will be the last time."
Huh?
Her face froze at my words. I made it clear to her. "I'm fed up with living with a couple like you. I won't take care of you anymore. I don't even want to breathe the same air. I was foolish to be deceived by your words about being worried. Don't ever involve me in your lives again."
Wait, Harper, what are you talking about?
"I'm grateful you gave birth to David. But this is my limit. I won't have anything to do with you guys, even at weddings or funerals. Don't contact me, no matter what. You guys are no longer my son or daughter." The two of them teared up. I quickly gathered my things, breathing heavily. As I was leaving, David asked with looking puzzled.
"Grandma, are you leaving?"
"I'm sorry, David. We might not meet again, but take care."
Really? I don't want to not see you.
Thank you. Grandma will always pray for your happiness. While I saw him look sad, I stroked his head and left the restaurant. I didn't look back, afraid my resolve would waver. Later, I called my younger son Robert and explained everything. He was furious with Andrew and advised me to end the cohabitation immediately. Upon arriving home, I packed the essentials and headed to Robert's house. They offered to let me stay until I found a new place. A few days later, I decided to sell the family home. It was sad to let go of the house full of memories with my husband, but I didn't want to leave Andrew's family free rein anymore. The house was quickly sold, and they were soon to be evicted. Without me bearing the living expenses, their life changed drastically. Although they managed to move into another place, apparently, they constantly fought over money. Robert received requests for help but blocked Andrew's number, knowing the situation. The only regret I had was David, but it was a fitting outcome for them. As for me, I'm enjoying a peaceful life in my new house. Robert's family visits me regularly, so I don't feel lonely. I plan to enjoy my independent life while I'm still physically able.